Hello and welcome to your Kentucky Derby 150 preview. I'm Brent Hesse, fired up for the Run for the Roses, and we've got a big episode. Let's jump right into it. We're going to run through all the horses 1 through 21, maybe 22. Got to be sure, especially you never know when Rich Strike's going to be coming to town. So we got to cover all those extra eligibles. We're going to run through them all with some race replays, also then get into a pace projection and top picks and long shots, of course, so that we can all cash some tickets here in the Kentucky Derby. Let's start right away getting into the first horse. Number 1 from the inside post is Dornoch. Dornoch is a front-running horse. He wants to be near the pace, probably going to go for the lead from the rail, doesn't want to get boxed in. He tried to do that last time in the Bluegrass, sit behind horses. It did not work well for him. He's a horse that has won 3 out of 6 career lifetimes, including this race we're going to show you, a big one between him and one of the favorites in the Kentucky Derby in the Remsen. Dornoch was in the lead, way out in front, and Sierra Leone came from dead last to take the lead. Dornoch, though, rallied back and ended up winning the race. A very impressive effort from Dornoch. It put both those two horses on alert how far away they dominated the rest of that field, including Domestic Product, who's in the Derby. But since then, Dornoch hasn't been impressive. This year, barely beat a very weak field in the Fountain of Youth, then came back for a 4th place finish in the Bluegrass. So has he gotten any better since his 2-year-old year? That's the question. He's going to have to improve off his start so far this year to have a chance, plus contend with other pace setters up front. Now we've got the number 2, Sierra Leone, who is the second choice, ridden by Tyler Gaffalione, trained by Chad Brown. He's got great connections, and he has won 3 out of his 4 career lifetime starts. The only one he didn't was the one you just watched, where he took a lead on Dornoch but couldn't get it done, battling in the stretch. He's come from behind in all of his races. He's a deep closer, and that's what he's going to look to do. It's exactly what he did in this race, the Risen Star, which was a loaded field, has 4 other Derby horses in it. The top 5 all in the Derby field in this finish, and Sierra Leone ran past them all to win it. He's been incredible. He not only won the Risen Star, but then he won the Bluegrass, which has a number of Derby horses in it. Sierra Leone is a very impressive horse. If he gets a fast pace, he's going to be the one storming down late. Big fan of this one, Sierra Leone. Now the number 3, Mystic Dan. Mystic Dan is a horse that if it's sloppy, you're going to have to upgrade Mystic Dan. He ran his best race by far in the muddy track of Oaklawn Park back in February. Dominated that field, winning by 8 lengths. Since then, he returned in the Arkansas Derby and ran 3rd place behind a Bob Baffert horse and a horse in this Derby that we're about to show you, and just a couple more horses. Mystic Dan 20-1 on the morning line. It's going to be tough, trained by Kenny McPeak, but if it's sloppy, definitely upgrade Mystic Dan. Number 4 is Catching Freedom, a Brad Cox horse ridden by Flavien Prat. Catching Freedom was the horse that finished 3rd in that Risen Star we showed you behind Sierra Leone. Now here he is in the Louisiana Derby, his most recent race after that Risen Star. And Catching Freedom did exactly what Sierra Leone did in the last one, which is come from dead last to sweep around the field and get it done on the wire. Catching Freedom, a closer and a really impressive horse coming on strong as of late. He's going to be another big one to watch out for. 8-1 on the morning line, so one of the, not favorites, but right behind the favorites in terms of the choices to win this whole race. A major contender in the Kentucky Derby. Number 5, Catalytic, is a lightly raced horse. Only 3 career races, but has won 1 out of the 3 and finished 2nd in the other 2, including in the Florida Derby, his most recent race. Lost by 13 lengths, but came in 2nd place. So what does that tell you? Well, the horse that won that race, a monster, and we'll talk about him later on. Catalytic, I think he's just a step behind. If you lost to a Derby horse by 13 lengths in your most recent race, it's going to be hard to make up that ground. I think Catalytic, especially with only 3 starts career, is going to be in too deep in this field. Next, we've got the number 6, which is Just Steel. Just Steel, a D. Wayne Lucas trained horse. And we just talked about a horse that only has 3 lifetime starts. Just Steel has the most, 11 career starts. He's been running a bunch and has had some up and down performances. This year alone, he's had 3 second places, but also a 7th place. So he's been in the mix for a lot of races, but one race he really threw in a clunker. This race we're going to show you is the Arkansas Derby, his most recent race, where he was 32-1 because he was coming off that 7th place finish in the Rebel. And he ran really impressively, just 2 lengths behind Muth, who is a Bob Baffert trained horse, so not eligible for the Derby. And that horse that ran 3rd in that race, it was Mystic Dan, the horse that we talked about earlier. So Just Steel has been pretty consistent in the top 2 or 3 besides that one bad Rebel race. If he runs his best, he might be able to get a piece of it, but he's hard to trust. Does have the experience though. Number 7, Honor Marie. Honor Marie is a deep closer, just like Sierra Leone and just like Catching Freedom. And we don't have any more videos to show you of Honor Marie because we already showed you both of his races in his 3-year-old season. That was the Risen Star and the Louisiana Derby. Ran 5th in the Risen Star's first race of the year. Then looked a lot sharper in the Louisiana Derby, barely losing out to Catching Freedom. So if the pace is hot, expect all 3 of those horses to come from the back: Sierra Leone, Catching Freedom, and Honor Marie. A decent price at 20-1, an improving type. Number 8, Just a Touch, is another Brad Cox trained horse, ridden by Florent Giroux. And here is the Bluegrass Stakes, which is the race he most recently ran in, and he competed against Sierra Leone and several others that are going to be in this Derby: Epic Ride and Dornoch, plus maybe Mugatu, who is the extra eligible horse. Just a Touch was on this fast pace, and he just wasn't able to hang on. Sierra Leone ran right by him at Keeneland in the Bluegrass. But Just a Touch, only 3 career races as well for him. He's finished in the top 2 all 3. Major contender in this Derby, 10-1 on the morning line. Number 9, Encino, scratched from the Derby. Number 10 is Tio Password, the Japanese winner of the Japanese entrance to get into the Kentucky Derby. They have their own points preps over there. And he was the winner and only took 2 lifetime races. So he is actually the liveliest ran horse in the field. 2 lifetime races, 2 wins. In his most recent race in Japan, he wired the field, took him front to the back, but I don't think that he's going to be able to do that again this race. He's facing much tougher competition, and he's just untested. Tio Password is going to be tough to trust in the Derby. Number 11, Forever Young, another Japanese horse, but this one's a little different than Tio Password because he has raced 5 times in his lifetime, and not only has he raced 3 times in Japan, he's raced in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Here is the UAE Derby. He won to get him into the field. Forever Young, 5 for 5 lifetime. This is a horse that the Japanese have been impressed with as soon as he stepped on the racetrack. And they think he's got a real chance to win the Derby. We've heard that tons of times, though. Japanese horses have never hit the board in the Derby. The hype sometimes is there, and they never lived up to him. Could this be the time Forever Young? He's got the resume. He looks like he's got the ability. We'll see if it can translate to the Derby. I was burned on the Japanese horse last year, Derma Sotogake. He was my top pick. Ended up running 6th in the Derby. Later on in the year, finished 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Classic, so proved that he had the ability, but just wasn't ready for the Derby. What will Forever Young do in this spot? That we will talk about in a moment. Now, number 12, Track Phantom. Steve Asmussen trained, ridden by Joel Rosario. And this is another horse that wants to be on the lead. We've seen a couple of the replays of his races, as he was in the Risen Star and the Louisiana Derby that we've already showed you, and he was the horse that was in the front when they turned for home. He couldn't hold on in either race, and the Risen Star finished second behind Sierra Leone. In the Louisiana Derby, they were really going fast up front, and he got caught late by Catching Freedom along with Honor Marie and another horse to finish fourth. So Track Phantom, will he just fade when it gets to the real running late? That's what people seem to think, because he's 20-1 on the morning line. Expect him to be on or near the lead, though, early. Number 13, West Saratoga. West Saratoga is 50-1 on the morning line, and there's a reason for that, because he's run 3 races this year, none higher than the grade 3 level, and hasn't won any of them. 2 seconds and a third. Barely getting into this field. It just doesn't seem to be up to the caliber of the other horses in the field. I won't be using West Saratoga. He'll be maybe close early on, but I don't think he'll be around when it really matters. Number 14 is Endlessly. Endlessly is a turf horse, actually. Has never raced on grass. He's raced 4 times on turf, twice on synthetic. He's won 5 out of his 6 career lifetime starts, including this one, the Jeff Ruby Stakes, where he defeated previously mentioned West Saratoga by 4 lengths in the end. Looked really good in that race. Has looked good in all of his races. His only loss was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So he's been really great on the turf. But his trainer, Michael McCarthy, doesn't even really think he should be in this race. It's more of the owners wanting to have a horse in the Derby. Maybe he can translate it to translate grass to dirt, but I don't think so. I don't think that is the type of horse he is. If this wasn't on dirt, if it was on synthetic or a different surface, then Endlessly would have a real chance. And when he starts running back on grass later on this year, probably, watch for him. But for this Derby with 20 horses getting kickback and dirt in his face for the first time, I think it's too much to ask for this talented number 14, Endlessly. Number 15 is Domestic Product, another Chad Brown horse ridden by Irad Ortiz. So amazing connections, but 30-1 on the morning line. Why is that? Well, it's just because I don't really know if he's fast enough to compete against these horses. You saw that Remsen replay, the very first one with Dornoch and Sierra Leone going head to head. Well, Domestic Product finished 16 lengths back in 7th place. Here he is in what was probably his most impressive performance thus far of the year, the Holy Bull, where he didn't even win, finished 2nd place, but did beat Fierceness, who is the Derby favorite. We'll talk about him in a moment. Domestic Product ran 2nd, got by Fierceness late. I'm not impressed with his races. He's got great trainer, great jockey. I don't think that he's good enough, though, against this talented field. Number 16 is Grand Mo the First, another that is going to be up against it. He ran 3rd in the Florida Derby, and he ran 3rd in the Tampa Bay Derby. So the last 2 races, and 3rd in the race before that. So all 3 races this year he's ran 3rd place, including this Tampa Bay Derby, which is the one that we're going to show you right here. He pretty much goes nose to nose with Domestic Product late, but it wasn't a very good field. Tampa Bay Derby usually doesn't come out with a lot of good Derby horses when it comes to Kentucky Derby. So I don't really like Grand Mo the First at all. The fact that he ran that close to beating Domestic Product downgrades Domestic Product for me as well. And number 17 is Fierceness. Now this is the horse we really have to talk about, because we just watched him in that Holy Bull run 3rd place to a horse that I don't think is very good, that beat him in 2nd. But here he is in the Florida Derby, and he absolutely dominates this field. Running in 2nd is Catalytic, and 3rd is Grand Mo the First. Those horses were 13 and 15 lengths behind him when it was all said and done, which was the fastest speed figure any horse has earned, the 83-year-old in the Derby has earned this year. This other fastest speed figure he owns is in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and he won the Breeders' Cup last fall. So he is just an absolute beast of a horse when he's on. He's raced 5 times in his life. He's won 3, but the other 2 he's been very disappointing. That Holy Bull we just watched, where he was 3rd against not the best field, and in a race in his 2-year-old campaign right before the Breeders' Cup where he came in 7th place. So if he's on his game, I don't think anybody can beat him. The question is he going to be on his game? He's been on a win-lose pattern his whole career. He won his last race. So will he even it out, lose again, and be 3 out of 6 career lifetime? That is the question. Trained by Todd Pletcher, ridden by Johnny Velasquez. He's got great connections. He's been dominant when he gets on the lead or whether he's able to get comfortable near the lead. That is the question. He's going to want to be up close. How fast will they be going? Will he have enough in the tank to kick away and show his tremendous talent at the end? That's the question you got to ask yourself with fierceness. Number 18 is Stronghold. Stronghold is a West Coast shipper, so he has been doing all of his racing out in California and New Mexico in his last 4 races, including 3 out of his last 2 he's won. But the fact is, he hasn't raced any Derby competition in those last 4 races because, well, the only horses he's facing out there that are any count are the Bob Bafferts, who aren't allowed to race in the Derby. So it's a question of who has he been beating and who's he been facing. That's why he's 20-1 on the morning line, even though he's won his last 2 races, both graded stakes. We'll see if he can translate the horses he's been racing out west to the top of all the other locations across the country. Number 19 is Resilience. Resilience coming off a win in the Wood Memorial where he was impressive in victory. There was a lot of traffic that happened behind him in the field, and the horse that only lost to him by 2 lengths, Society Man, was 106-1 in that race. So that is a little worrisome that there was a horse that doesn't seem to be much count that far behind or that close to him. The race before, he was 4th in the Risen Star. We showed you that replay. He got passed by Sierra Leone and Catching Freedom late. Couldn't catch up to Track Phantom. So he's improving certainly with the win at the Wood Memorial. But is it enough? Trained by Bill Mott. Got a good trainer. A lot to ask, though. Society Man is the number 20. And Society Man, well, that was the 106 bomb at the Wood Memorial that ran 2nd place. Craziness as he had no races that looked like they were going to even be able to contend for a spot in the Derby. Then he ends up finding his way into 2nd place when it was all said and done. He's another one that is going to look to close from near the back of the pack. It was a lot closer in the Wood Memorial, though, so we'll see if he tries to get a little bit closer. It's ridden by Frankie Dettori, who is one of the best jockeys around the world. Usually does most of his riding in Europe, but now has been in America recently. It'll be interesting to see. I think that this horse just got lucky in the Wood. I don't think he's much count. But if he sits back, maybe he could sneak in and be an absolute big price at the bottom of a superfecta. 21 is Epic Ride. Epic Ride drew in when Encino scratched. And it's interesting enough because Epic Ride lost to Encino just 2 races back. Then he ran in the Bluegrass that we showed you earlier. Sierra Leone won, just a touch was 2nd. Epic Ride was 3rd in that race. And he was another one that was on or near the front. He's definitely going to be one coming over from the 21 post, is going to want to try to cut over across the field, get by a lot of horses. He's going to boost the pace in this race. I don't think that he'll be able to stick on late, though. Epic Ride. We'll see what he can do. 22, Mugatu. Don't expect him to be in the race, but if he is, he'll be at the back. He's a deep closer. He finished 5th in the Bluegrass. He finished 4th in the John Battaglia, which is the race Encino won, and Epic Ride, he ran 2nd. Would be probably the worst horse in the field by far, but probably passed the tired horses at the end and finish 8th or 10th, depending on how fast they go. But I would not expect Mugato to be of any threat if he enters the field. So those are the 20 horses in this year's Kentucky Derby. Now, let's look at our pace projection. So starting out, we will have our pace setters. These are the 4 horses I expect to be on or near the pace, probably the front 4 as they make the first turn, and down the backstretch, Dornock on the inside, Track Phantom, and then From the outside, Fearless and Epic Ride coming over. The order they sort themselves out at and how fast they go will be a major factor. Fierceness, obviously one of the favorites, if not the favorite in the race. He will want to be close to the lead, if not on the lead. But if they're going super fast, they'll get tired out and set up for the horses behind them. The horses that'll be right behind them is this group, in my opinion. The 6, Just Steel. Number 8, Just a Touch. Number 10, T.O. Password. Number 13, West Saratoga. 16, Grandmo the First. 18, Stronghold. And 19, Resilience. In this group, the biggest contender has to be Just a Touch, as he was in that same spot in the Bluegrass. Took the lead turning for home, but then Sierra Leone was able to go right by him late. Another of those horses that I like on the outside, Stronghold and Resilience. They're going to have to be able to tuck over. They don't want to be super wide going around the turn, or because that just doesn't allow them to save any ground. They'll be running further than all the other horses. Won't have as much left in the tank. In the mid-pack, I think it'll be number 3, Mystic Dan, number 5, Catalytic, number 11, Forever Young, number 15, Domestic Product, and number 20, Society Man. In this group, eyes are going to be on number 11, Forever Young for me, the Japanese horse. And in his recent races, and pretty much all his races, he's liked to run wide, which doesn't save him the ground, but avoids that dirt in his face, which apparently makes him uncomfortable. So he's been able to just sit wide, and he's had more talent than the horses he's been facing in his previous races, so that it doesn't matter if he has to run a few extra yards. He's good for it. Now in this field, that's a really tall task. I think he's going to have to just find a pocket, take a little bit of dirt, and still be good as they turn for home. Will be interesting to see what kind of trip Forever Young gets, but I think he'll be somewhere in the middle. Then closers. I've got number 4, Catching Freedom, and number 14, Endlessly. Catching Freedom and Endlessly, both really talented horses. Endlessly, of course, that turf horse. I don't know how he'll do on the dirt. Catching Freedom won the Louisiana Derby with this kind of style coming from the back. And then the deep closers, number 2, Sierra Leone, and number 7, Honor Marie. Both of those horses have had success closing, especially Sierra Leone, who's won his last 2 races, the Risen Star and the Bluegrass, coming from dead last. I expect him to both be there. And then it all depends on how fast are they going. Well, with 4 horses that want the lead, Dornoch, Track Phantom, Fierceness, and Epic Ride, I think that the pace is going to be fast enough to set up a late kick for those closers and deep closers. And that is why my top pick in the Kentucky Derby is the number 2, Sierra Leone. He's been perfect this year. Keeps getting better. Looks like he's ready to run the best race of his career. So I'm going with Sierra Leone as my top pick to win the 150th edition of the Kentucky Derby. My number 2 pick, can't believe I'm going back to this well, but going with the Japan horse, Forever Young. Super talented horse, and I think that he's one of the most likely horses to win this race. So he's going to be my second pick. Because if Sierra Leone doesn't, I hope it's Forever Young. Because if it's not, it probably means it's my third pick, which is Fierceness, who's going to be the favorite in this race. And nothing against Fierceness. He's a tremendous horse, but I think he's going to be bet down too low for my liking. He'll be the favorite. And I think that there's a good chance that he runs into trouble. He either doesn't get the start he wants, which kind of happened in the Holy Bull, or he is out in front, but these other horses make him go faster than he's accustomed to. He doesn't have that gas late. I think there's a lot of things that could happen with Fierceness that makes him not fire his best race. If he runs his best, if he gets in a comfortable spot, he's going to be hard to catch. Sierra Leone will be given a big head start in the stretch, and he'd be hard to catch. So I think those are the 3 most obvious likely winners. But my order is Sierra Leone, number 1, Forever Young, number 2, and Fierceness, number 3. Now, my 4th pick I'll add in will be number 4, Catching Freedom, just because I think he's the most likely horse outside of Sierra Leone to be in the money. If you play exactas, trifectas, superfectas, definitely use Catching Freedom. because I think that there's a good chance he'll be running late and have a good strong finish in the top 4 or 5. Now for my top long shots of the race. As we go to that, I think my number 1 long shot has to be Stronghold. Coming from California, he hasn't faced this competition, but I think that he can take a step forward. He's won his last 2 races, so if he continues that momentum, he could be a horse that could definitely finish in the top 3 or 4 at a big price. Second long shot is Honor Marie. Honor Marie will be making that run with Sierra Leone and Catching Freedom from the back of the pack. And I don't think that he's as strong as those two, but I think that he could follow them. And maybe if they get stuck, it's a lot of traffic navigating those 20 horses. So if one of those horses tries to go one way and they get blocked off, Honor Marie picks a different path. That could be the difference in several lengths by the wire. Honor Marie, my second long shot. Third long shot is going to be Resilience. Resilience won that Wood Memorial. I think is going to have to continue to improve, but is another horse that I want to at least have somewhere in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th spots on my tickets. And then my 4th and final long shot, Door Knock. Door Knock is going to be on or close to the lead. The only thing is I think he'll probably tire out late, but if they do go slower, maybe Fierceness doesn't break well, Door Knock's able to get a comfortable lead, he could take him a far way and maybe still finish out in the top 5 when it's all said and done. So there's my top picks and my best long shots for Kentucky Derby 150. Hope that's all you need to know to pick some winners. I think my favorite bet is certainly going to be Sierra Leone and Forever Young on top in a trifecta and a superfecta. Use both of those on top. Then sprinkle in all those other horses that I mentioned, especially Catching Freedom and Honor Marie in the 2nd through 3rd or 4th spots, whether it's a trifecta or a superfecta, and hope to cash a big ticket for the Derby. Enjoy the race, and thanks for watching.